Alright, 13th video. Okay, so, we just started this week, but despite barely starting this week, there has already been so much fight news to be excited about. And of course, what I mean is this week we have the fight between everyone's favorite goofball, Rainer the Ritter, versus another favorite goofball, Brennan Allen. But there is also another form of MMA news that I would like to talk about today, and let's hear it from the bald man himself.
Now let's go to UFC 323 from T-Mobile Arena on December 6th. The main event, the number 3 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, Merab, makes the quick turnaround to face the number 2 ranked Petr Yan.
Yes, that is right. Merab Dvalishvili is coming back after just fighting 2 weeks ago, is already making a comeback. They don't call him the machine for nothing, I suppose. And there are just some things I like to talk about when it comes to this fight. And firstly, I'd like to start with the obvious, and that is how quick of a turnaround Merab is making to fight in December. And I mean, listen, man, if you are making a personal criteria for what makes a good champion, I would imagine being active is at least considered, right? I mean, I would imagine. Anyway, but the reason why I bring this up is because Merab is, again, like I said in that video that no one watched. And that is how I said in that video how Merab is everything people say Khabib was, but actually is. Because when you look at Merab, you just think, when is it a matter of time before you get taken down? It's not even a matter of fact if you're gonna stop him, but rather, when are you going to be taken down, right? That's usually what you always have to keep in mind when facing Merab. You know, he's just gonna keep taking it down, and he's gonna break you eventually, right? Now, for Petr Yan, before I say what I'm going to say regarding his fighting ability, I just like to say, as a longtime fan of Petr Yan, I would be classified as what others might call a Yan-sexual. And before you say that it's gay, alright, I will just admit that. It's a little gay. But I digress. That's not what we're here to talk about. But point is, I remember I used to be one of those Yan super glazers. I mean, I remember back in the... I don't actually remember the time, and I'm not going to go back to check right now. But point is, I remember when Yan beat the fuck out of Aljo, and I was sitting there like, man, no one could beat this guy. He had it all, you know? The striking, the grappling, the aura. I truly thought we were about to see the next bantamweight GOAT. And it's crazy that I thought that, because right after I just thought that, he goes on to lose to Aljo after, once again, I may add, he beat the fuck out of Aljo in the striking and even in the grappling and the aura. Obviously, he beat him in that front too. He truly did beat him everywhere, right? But then he does what would change, honestly, not just his career, but the entirety of the UFC timeline. And that's the infamous knee to the face of a grounded opponent. And Aljo wins the belt via DQ. And I'm not gonna lie, at the time I was very pissed, because you have Aljo become the very first champ due to DQ, right? There were a lot of narratives going on at that time. After Aljo won the belt, which is maybe a video for another day. But point is, the rematch was inevitable, right? But they eventually have the rematch. Yan loses a razor close decision, you know. Since it was a close decision, I obviously thought, well, you know, he still has the striking and the aura, obviously, right? But then you realize there was something missing. Something that got taken away in that fight. And that is the amazing grappling of Petr that we thought he had. Because again, man, I'd like to repeat, as a Yan super glazer, I truly thought we had the perfect fighter everywhere, right? In terms of the striking and the grappling, and of course the aura, right? And it's at this point of the video you're probably asking yourself, were you born on TikTok or something? What the hell are you talking about aura, and how is that even relevant to Yan's career? Look, if you're patient with me, I'll explain. All right, why I think that's also important when you look at this rematch. Okay, but point is, right, Yan loses a close decision. As a Yan super glazer, we finally found something not to glaze in terms of his grappling, and that was the jiu-jitsu deficiencies, right, of Petr. Well, us Yan glazers still had something to glaze, right? The amazing flow state striking, and he still beats everyone else in the division. Well, as the Yan glazers said this to themselves, the MMA gods had a funny matchup in mind, and that was Peter versus Sean O'Malley. You know us young Glazers were rejoicing in this fight because although everyone acknowledged how good Sean O'Malley is, I don't know what I said back there. The narrative was definitely, oh man, rip Sean O'Malley, he's not ready, all that, right? Peter was a pretty decent favorite at the time, but we learned that all talk is cheap, right? Peter would go in there, fight O'Malley, and lose, right? Not gonna argue the decision, but as a young Glazer, I definitely was on the side that Peter Yan got robbed again. But I'm not here to discuss the correct decision. I'm not the weasel, all right? But I will say though, no matter the decision, whatever you think it was, yet another very close Yan fight. Unfortunately, Yan at this point of time is 0-2, which if you ask certain Yan Glazers, you could say those two aren't real losses, right? Now, I mean, that's a claim you could make if you're a Yan Super Glazer. Now that this ever happened, when was the last time a fighter went 0-2 in their most recent fight, but still got super glazed? Now, if you're some sort of MMA nerd, you may comment, oh, well, actually, there was this very skillful Brazilian back in 2006. No one cares, though, bro. Go watch a Weasel vid. That sounds more your style. Anyway, point is, it doesn't happen very often, or even at all, for a fighter to go 0-2 and still be seen as arguably one of the GOATs. And why? Well, I like to propose a theory. Remember what I said about aura? Well, my dear viewer, this is where it all comes together. Now, despite what you think of the decisions of Sean O'Malley and Aljo, what were their main offensive attacks? Okay, Yan against Yan, right? Aljo used his grappling. He primarily won because of the grappling advantage he had in that fight, right? Sean O'Malley, again, won because of the striking advantage that he had in that fight, right? So you look at a weird paradox here where Yan outstriked the grappler, but lost due to the grappling. And then Peter Yan lost to Sean O'Malley, but out-grappled him. So, again, it just seems at this time, right, it was just unfortunate. But point is, right, ultimately, these two dimensions of fightings were a reason why Peter Yan lost, right? Now with these two losses in mind, us Peter Yan Glazers had to come to a new realization. He was not the best striker. He was not the best grappler. But, having these close fights with these two guys who went on to become champion, he still had aura because he still put on a competitive fight. And, he could have arguably won those, right? Arguably, right? I'm not saying he did, just saying it's an argument you could make. But he still had aura, despite not being the best in these fields. Peter still made these fights super close, showing that he is still a great martial artist. He had respect and aura in the division. It was at this point us Yan Glazers had to accept that maybe Yan skillfully isn't as good as we thought. But there is one thing. No matter what, you will always have a fight with him. You'll never just run over him. His presence was too strong. He's too skillful, right? But then Merab, the little Georgian that could, came in to fight Peter and just dominated him. It was at this point us Yan Glazers had to just accept the fact Yan striking, grappling, and aura got exposed, not in the way that he sucks, but just exposed in the way of seeing it as it is. Peter is a great, but not the best. And it looked like it was over for poor Peter, hell, he'll never be a champion again, all that, right? But then he goes on to win 3 in a row. Why? Not because, he was the best strike, not because he's the best striker, not because he's the best grappler, not because he has the best aura or most presence inside the cage, right? I mean, but because although No Mercy Yan is not the marauder in terms of his fighting capability, maybe we didn't know his best skill was coming back from adversity. Because look, man, say what you will about Peter Yan, but to come back from losing 2 close decisions that you arguably could have gone your way to then getting dominated your last fight and the person who dominated you to become champion, I mean, just like how much more odds could be stacked against you than at this point of time that Peter was unfortunately in a position of being in, right? So I think no one would exactly. No one would blame Peter for Jan for just calling it quits on a title shot. But despite everything, despite all the setbacks, he showed up. He showed up, earned his way back to the title. Not because he was the best, but because when it comes to never giving up, no matter the struggles, it seemed no one does it in the bantamweight division better than Peter No Mercy Jan. And how will Merab Divilishvili, the king of breaking someone down, break down the Peter Yan, who's already been in that position before, but has shown to always come back stronger than ever? You know, I think it's an interesting fight. So I think just no matter what, I think that's a very decent narrative to go into this fight looking at, because again, I'd like to say, man, Peter Yan has shown that he has been broken before, and it's not about how hard you get hit, it's about how hard you get hit and peak on going, you know. And that's why I think that's actually where Peter's best skill is. And I think Merab will not as easily, to say the least, break him as much as he did the first time. Or maybe he will. Who knows? But no matter what, I think Peter Yan's got a. I think this is something to consider when looking into the fight. So, anyways, point is, thanks for watching the video, guys. Leave a comment on what you thought about it. Do you think Yan has a chance, or will history repeat itself? Let me know down in the comments, and leave a like and subscribe if you like the content. I'll see you in the next one. Oh God, my mic just shat itself right there. Sorry about that for you guys wearing headphones right now. Don't worry, I'll edit it out. I probably won't. But yeah, see you in the next video. See you in the next one. I will be talking about Rainer de Ritter versus Brennan Allen, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day after. I just really wanted to talk about this Peter Yan matchup because it just came out. Mr. Baldman just said it himself. So, all right, peace.